Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Cy here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. As always, I am Tessa, and I'm joined by the lovely, accomplished, amazing, kindest soul on earth, Cy.
Oh, so sweet, Tessa. I'm just honored to be here with you as always, and for everyone listening, welcome and thank you for trusting us with this time and space with you.
I thought we might try something first before we delve into our topic. Remember when we talked about how to answer the question, "How are you?" And you told this great story about how you had somebody, like a professional in your life, who would just give some random piece of information, right? Like that was their way of answering that question. And it has stuck with me. And we talked about challenging everyone to answer, "Hey, how are you?" with more than just fine or good or well or whatever your default response is that doesn't really accurately reflect how you are.
Right.
So, you ready? Let's try it. "Hey, Cy, how are you?"
Hey, Tessa. Well, I'm feeling rested today. I got some good sleep. I'm feeling excited for the day. It's Sunday, and I get to be talking with my good friend here about some tools and ways to stay uplifted through really challenging times. And so I'm feeling grateful to be here with you. How are you
And
feeling
that's
today?
how it's done, folks. I am feeling partially rested. We have a new puppy, and he is a ball of energy at all times. And right now, I'm very much hoping that he doesn't unplug my computer and my electronics because he has figured that out as of last week. And it was kind of a surprise when all of a sudden everything went dark. I was like, what is happening? And it was, earlier this week, or was it last week, we had that big spectrum outage that affected everybody's internet access. I'm like, is that what's happening again? But no, it was just my little pug puppy who had figured out how to unplug the television. I'm sorry, television,
It sounds
unplug the computer.
it sounds like the most adorable problem ever.
I will confess it is a rather adorable problem. Yes. Because while he's down there under my desk, he's like doing this dance, like he thinks these chords are the greatest thing that ever happened to him.
He's like mission accomplished. Having a happy dance. I love it. Just
Yeah,
living his best
you
life.
realize how cool having a puppy energy around, right? Is because it's just this like unconditional freedom and joy and pleasure and love. Like, it is everything that like
Yes.
we hope to be as human.
Yes, and you need that reminder. I love that. Just reminder that that's what we're going for, and maybe a little clue on how to tap into it. I love that. It's exciting even to hear about.
Right? And I think it's actually a really good segue to what I thought we might talk about today, which is I saw this video of RuPaul giving a speech about his new book coming up, their new book coming up. I'm sorry, I don't know RuPaul's pronouns.
I think he uses he him when he's out of drag, and I think she her when she's in drag. So I think you're fine either way.
So anyway, he has a new book out, a memoir, and he was talking about it, I think, in front of some like business organization or at some festival. And the snippet that I saw was he's holding up his cell phone, and his cell phone picture is a picture of him as a 5-year old. And he goes on to talk about how, I have this picture of me on my phone because it's my reminder that that kid's heart is still my heart, and I need to protect him. And I need to know that we are all living as our younger selves and all the trauma or issues or whatever you might want to call it of just being a child continue, right? I think we talked about this at lunch too, right? We have the
Yeah.
responses that we have to a lot of things because of things that happen in our childhood. And he is so adamant in talking about this picture of young RuPaul and saying, I have to protect him. It is my job to protect him, and it is my job to make sure that I can heal his heart by not responding and replying like I felt like I wanted to as a kid. And I'm like,
Mm,
that's
mm,
powerful and that's deep. And yes, please,
yes,
and thank
that's
you.
deep. Yes. And I mean, one of the things I love right off the bat is that even though I wish that this wasn't the case, I feel like so many of us, we've talked about this, feel like we need permission to put ourselves first. Um,
Yes.
just trying to overcome all of the terrible socialization that we have been exposed to. Um, and this is an interesting framework, right? It's an interesting mindset of like, I'm doing this for him. And yeah, that person is you. But thinking about that person as like this child, that deserves protection, that maybe, isn't going to get it anywhere else, or never didn't get it, through childhood. um I don't know, there's something about that that just gives you like this sense of duty in a good way, I
Hmm.
guess, like for a good cause, for a good reason. And it gives you also like this little bit of liberation in terms of like, oh, you don't have to worry about it, you're being selfish. Which is just sad that that's, the default, but it is. Like, I mean, every time we talk about, self care, or if we talk about, spending time doing this for yourself or anything, I mean, there's just this little bit of programming that we're still trying to undo, or most of us, I think, are still trying to undo or overcome or just like ignore so that we can do the thing. But this, I don't know, there's something really sweet about being able to say, yeah, this child deserves this, and I'm the person to offer that. It's my duty. I like that a lot.
This doesn't it also feel like kind of a workaround, right? Like we as adults
Hmm.
don't think that we deserve the time or the protection to protect ourselves
Right.
or to establish our boundaries, but it's okay
Yes.
if we talk about it as we're protecting our inner child. But it's not okay because an adult shouldn't need this.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's again another, just another remnant of all the programming, right? Like at some point you're
Oh
taught
yeah.
you're an adult, you can, this basically buck up type of situation. And
Oh,
like now
isn't
it's
that the worst?
the worst. And it's just sad that I mean, it's really fascinating to me. Like sometimes people talk about the difference, in socialization of men and women, and who gets to at least feel emotions or express emotions. But I don't know why that comes to mind, but it just makes me think about the fact that like we're all socialized to suppress our emotions, period. Like hard stop. I understand that like in different ways, to different degrees, we have different outlets, we have different tools, we have different access, but it's still there for all of us, right? Like you're an adult, you need to be professional, you need to and like don't cry in the workplace, right? Like you don't, like, I mean, women being what's the word, like kind of like tagged as, oh, she's very emotional, like that's a huge weird thing that we don't want in the workplace, or in other parts of our life. Like you might want to be seen as the strong woman, like there's so many pressures of just like being not human, frankly. Like that's the way I think about it. I look at these children and I'm like, these children honestly have it more figured out than anybody. Like they're just emotional, they want affection, they ask for it. They feel bad,
Hmm.
they cry, like they're hungry, they tell you, like I think that what we do as adults, I mean, it's definitely a product of socialization, but we've socialized each other out of being human, and more and more, I say this all the time, I feel like we're being socialized to be, not like a conspiracy or anything like that, but I joke that like I feel like we're just being pushed towards being more like cyborgs than anything else at this point because we're just connected to technology all the time. I mean, we're interacting with bots apparently online, which I find very strange, and another reason why I just can't be online that much. But it's just this weird, silent, pushing towards something that is away from our humanity. And so I love this because it just reminds us like we are these children, like we're just older children, like in a way, like there's no magic line of adulthood that we've been told. My baby girl has been asking me like, when are you an adult? When are you a teenager? When do you live on your own? And I've been saying, well, you're a teenager whenever you have the word teen, like, and she's like, okay, so you're still a teenager at 18 and 19. But even it's just really fascinating to see her figuring it out for herself. I don't like to tell her answers. I like to see what she thinks. And she thinks like, well, even at 20, like I still think that like I would live with my parents and, maybe I'm not
Aw,
all the way grown up and I'm not an adult yet and I'm still in school and I just that's her opinion, and I think it's different for everyone, and I think that's really the truth. It really, I think, is the truth. I think there are people who are 68 years old that are still not adults, and and I don't mean that in
mhm.
terms of like function. I mean emotionally, like people mature or change or grow at different paces. They have different life experiences. I mean, and what even is an adult? I don't even know if I know anymore. I really think that this poses a deeper question of just like, how do we take care of ourselves at every stage in our lives? And I feel like there's so many stages of life that we don't talk about and we just simplify it down to child and adult. And I don't think that's fair to the human experience. And in my experience, it's, there's so many phases, there's so many chapters, there's so many eras, as I like to say.
That brings up so much for me. First off, I'm so glad we're not like visually recording because the dramatic eye rolls that I did when we were talking about women being called emotional at work were, how if you could dislocate your eyeball, I would have done
Oh,
that.
I
But
love
I'm also
it.
I'm thinking about like my experiences, and I do not think being emotional is tied to a gender because I know plenty of men who are more emotional than most women that I know.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I know non-gendered people who are more stable than a lot of people I know when it comes to regulating their emotions, protecting their emotions. And
Hmm.
I was thinking about what you said about, crying at work. And all I thought is how quickly do we, and this is probably our socialization, all automatically assume the bad person in that situation is the one that's crying, and that's the one that needs to be that's broken or needs to be fixed or
Mm.
whatever like situation. But we're
Mm.
not addressing the fact that somebody said something that triggered this, and whatever they said
Hmm.
most likely was not a good thing or appropriate or workplace appropriate, right? Because
Correct.
it is.
Yes.
It's not that that person decided to start crying at work because they started to cry
They're
at work.
just so emotional. I mean, there's so much subtext there where it's like
So
literally
much.
if you're first of all, if you're a woman and you're crying, like the issue is you're the problem and you're
Correct.
just too emotional, and that literally exactly to what your point is saying, it's signifying to everyone that this has nothing to do with what is happening in the workplace. It's just you can't handle it. Everything in the
Correct.
workplace is normal, everything is fine, everything is correct. It's just you're the problem. You have an issue because you're crying, and that's just too much.
And
So
I don't know about you, but have you been in any workplace where it is just like an emotionally stable and healthy environment?
nope.
No, because there's so
No.
many people involved. It's like I perhaps impossible. So all you can hope is like all your little people are
Hmm.
emotionally available and emotionally thoughtful enough not to trigger other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And and why can't we be an emotionally intelligent workplace? Like that's another part
Yeah.
where it's like we can't challenge ourselves. We just, I mean, it's just like society on a whole. I always say workplace is like a microcosm, right? And it's
Hmm.
like just like society in a whole, or on whole rather, is we look at the person who's victimized most often and we say, well, you're the problem. You just need to conform. And so that we can like go back to thinking that this is the right way to be, the way that we already are. It brings up like ideas of rape culture to me. It brings up all of this idea. I mean, so many things, sexualization of young girls and all kinds of things that are just like, we just find this acceptable as a society, whether or not we say it out loud. I think that's why it was such a shock when people started talking about rape culture and calling it what it is, because people are like, wait, we're not we're not a rape culture, right? And then people are like, no, that's exactly what we are. That's what we're doing. That is what we're perpetuating. I think it's so shocking because people, I mean, we're in the water, right? We just think the water's fine. And there's such a psychological effect of like, we don't want to change something that's mostly working for us, right? And so people get really scared when there are disruptors that are challenging and saying, well, this is not right, this is actually not working out for everyone, this is not a good thing. And so, just thinking about, again, like this is a magical topic for me because it just makes me feel like if I go back and think about my younger self, my child, my inner child, or like literally me as a child or young woman, I guess. I don't even want to use that term. I'll just say like, adolescent, at every age in my childhood. Um, it just gives me a whole other level of empathy. And I think for me specifically, like I know that I'm an empath, like I know that about myself, and that when I'm in situations of conflict, I want everyone to feel good and, for everything to resolve. And I want to, I'm mindful, and I actually take on a lot of the feelings of the people that I'm, in the conflict with. And so I feel like this topic is opening this other space for the person in the room that is technically me, but that I never make space for. Like I just don't consider her feelings, or maybe even feel her feelings as much as I'm feeling others, which might seem weird and counterintuitive to a lot of people who, their feelings are at the center, but that's how it is for empaths. It's really a struggle to put yourself at the center, when the first instinct is to put others. And so it's just another way that this kind of challenges, the instinct, or the socialization, I should say, because that's really how we get there.
Doesn't it feel like that socialization is gaslighting, right? Like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
not really what happened. That's not, you don't really need to be reacting like that.
Mm-mm. No, and I
I'm
mean,
just
like I
like,
said, the children
oh,
haven't figured out.
oh,
They
yeah.
that's not how they act first. That's not how that's just not how we're. I don't know. I don't want to say we're not wired to be empathetic, because we are. But what I'm saying is like children understand that they have needs. Like they are really like, they're just so intuitive, and
Hmm.
we lose that over time. It's socialized out of us. And so I like the idea of just thinking about that in general too, because it becomes like so apparent to me anyways, of like, if I was a child in this room, what would I be experiencing? How would I be outwardly expressing it? There's so many little things that are telling us to not express our emotions, to not, truly let ourselves feel what we would otherwise feel. I mean, I think it's really deep, it's deeply seated in there, where it's like before anyone even says a thing that really offends you, maybe you're already preparing yourself to like, okay, don't get too upset. You know what I mean? Like, or I'm just gonna listen. I'm gonna take this. I mean, you literally and you have to tool yourself to get through this world, right? You
Oh,
have to
yeah.
learn how to navigate it. And so it's not like it doesn't make sense. It's not like this is a bad thing. These are tools of survival, right? These are tools to help us get through and to get where we want to be. So there's nothing wrong with that either. Like I say, socialization almost like it's a bad thing, but I mean, it's it's the way that we have, learned to operate and navigate this world. And so it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that we lose so much when we operate in those ways too, and we forget. We're not connected to our true, just like literally like our true humanity in my mind.
I have a, maybe I'd call it a trigger. There's probably a better word for it. People tend to just have described me as shy since I was a kid and continue to do
Mm-hmm.
it professionally. And I
Mm-hmm.
now in the last few years, like, I think you need to, I respond quickly. I'm like, I think you need to expand your vocabulary. Shy by
Mm-hmm.
definition means fear. And I can tell you for certain, I am not fearful of you or anything. Two, I think this is a cultural problem because I happen to be reserved and an observer. And
Mm-hmm.
you, then I go into this grand, you know, overly broad commentary about how, well, Americans just like loud and brusque, and the loudest person in the room wins. And
Mm-hmm.
I am not like that. I'm going to observe. Then I'm going to figure out what my interest is in this, what everyone's interest in this is, navigate it, and then, GTFO. That's what I'm going to do because I get so frustrated, and I think it's just as from a childhood trigger of like my parents
Yeah.
always saying, "Oh, well, she's shy." I'm like, yeah, no. But at that point when you're a kid, your vocabulary isn't as broad
Right.
as it should be. You
Right.
don't
Yep.
understand that there's a big difference between shy, timid, reserved, observant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Calculating.
that calculating, yeah, Machiavellian, whatever it might be,
Yes.
right? But adults put those labels on
Yeah.
kids, and then you're trying
And
to
then you're like,
break
oh,
free
that
of
must be
them,
who I am too. Like, I mean, at that point,
right?
you're learning words, so you're like, oh, I guess what I am is described by this word too. Like, it's very complicated. It's very like two-way street too. And
It
I think you're
is.
100%. I love that. I love the fact that you're letting people know too out loud. I think that's one of the hardest things for folks to get to is to, well, I just wanted to share first off that I learned that most adults, I think it's in the US, I don't know, someone's gonna have to fact check me, but I think it's most adults in the US only have like five like feeling words. Something like ridiculously small. And so what you're saying is so important because if we actually do expand our vocabulary and just allow for the nuances of the human
Hmm.
experience and the nuances of like personality, and the nuances of understanding each other, like it makes a huge difference. It's just, and what you're talking about is kind of conflict styles, I think, too, right? Like you're in the middle of something, whether or not you ask to be in the middle of that. I love, first of all, that you're deciding whether or not you want to engage in that and whether or not it's worth your time and energy, because I think most of us do not do that. That's another thing, like, at least for me, that I get pulled in so quickly because in my family, I think we had a lot of like, well, we had conflict and we had a lot of like, I don't know, my go-to was always like to defend myself and to like win, and yeah, and I would just use every tool that I could to do that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, but also you don't have to. We literally don't have to engage in this stuff. And I think that's the difference between our inner child or our childhood experience and our adulthood experience. I mean, the one thing that was always appealing to me to become an adult was the idea that like I would be free to make my own choices. Like I would be free to, decide where I'm going and who I'm going to be around. And even though it's still hard for me, like the fact that I have that freedom is huge. And, as a child, I did not have that.
Hmm.
I couldn't be like, well, I'm leaving. Or like, I'm not going to deal with this. Goodbye. Like I couldn't do
That's
that.
actually how I did it as a child. I'm like,
I
yeah,
love
no, I'm
that.
checked out. I'm out. But that's
Yeah.
also not healthy, right? Because that's me of like,
Well,
I'm just going to avoid this
well, no,
BS.
well, see,
I'm
that's,
just going to
but
go somewhere
see,
else.
I don't know if it's healthy or not. That's another thing that I wanted to dive into a little bit, because when you talk about, the way that you handle things, very different than the way I did, and still, today, like our conflict styles are evolving, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know that there's any like good or bad conflict style, actually.
I like
I,
that.
I think that everybody is literally like doing what's best for them, or trying to do what's best for them. Like we might not know what's
Yeah.
best for us. Like for me, my trajectory has been like, I need to survive. I'm going to fight in this situation. And it's what's really wild is I just said it and I didn't even realize, but like these are kind of like just straight trauma responses to like fight,
Oh
flight,
yeah.
or freeze, right? Like we literally talked
Yep.
about like fighting, leaving, or just not
Yep.
engaging, right? Like, and so
Yep.
when you think about it that way as a child, conflict is probably, very traumatizing, and maybe it still is. Maybe we're just, downplaying it because we're not children anymore. But I mean, it's scary. You don't know what the hell's going on, and don't know why people are angry and looking at you this way. And I mean, frankly, I
Hmm.
feel like as children, because you don't have like the same kind of language and nuance and understanding of all of the, complexities of human conflict, um, the way someone's looking at you and the way that somebody is, signing the body language and all of that, like those are very like base, like animal instinct type of like signals, like that's just like you're communicating whether or not you understand that. Like if you're, furrowing your brow and you're like, just looking angry, I mean, that tells a child a whole lot, and it's scary. And so I think that there's a lot of different conflict styles, and I think that what's fascinating is that sometimes we use different styles in different spaces too. So I don't know if this is true for you, but maybe you employ a certain kind of conflict style with your family versus with your friends versus with your spouse versus with your workplace employees and colleagues. You can employ different things that make sense in those different spaces too. And it makes me think about like why we do that. Are these survival mechanisms? Are they things that are like acceptable ways of, conflict management in these different spaces? Um, I think that every conflict style has like benefits and it has sometimes drawbacks too. And I think as an adult, you just have learned what works in different settings, maybe, or maybe
Hmm.
you're exactly the same as when you're a child and you only have one style. I don't know, but I do think like that's part of it, that you just, you have to kind of be responsive to the setting. And again, it goes back to, why are we responsive to the setting? Why aren't we all just 100% authentic ourselves all the time? Because we're not allowed to be.
And
Society tells us that's not okay.
I
And we
don't
pick
even
up
know
that
if,
message loud and clear.
and I don't even know if that works to be 100% authentic all the time when you're
Hmm.
dealing with different people with different
Right.
personalities. Like, and I think we're
Exactly.
multifaceted, right? Like, say we
Yeah.
have A through Z in our personalities, and we all do, and they all represent different things for everybody. We have to figure out which one is most harmonious with somebody else if our desire is to be in harmony with
If
other people,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What's your goal? What's your end goal too? I mean, thinking about all the conflict that exists, on TV and all these places. Some of it I think is just like, at this point, not some of it, so much of it is just so performative. And
It's
the goal is obviously not resolution, people, because this is not what we would be employing if it was, And so it really is about like, what are you trying to accomplish here? And I love that, like, you said, like, well, avoiding is not the healthiest thing. Well, I think it can be a very healthy thing, like, I mean, I'm on a news break right now, which is maybe kind of
yeah.
controversial, but honestly, like, I think self-preservation is the most important thing for me and for my family and my community. Like, I can't serve anybody if I'm done, and I'm gonna be checked out and completely, just, I don't even know the word, but just like completely out of it. So yeah, I think avoidance is actually a very powerful tool, especially if you know that, engaging in this conflict is just going to be harmful to you and is not going to get you anything positive out of it. Why would you do anything else, actually? So I think it really
Maybe
depends. It depends on you and the conflict.
this makes me think that you and I are doing a good job of protecting our inner kid
Mm,
because I think the choices
hmm.
we make are in a way to protect ourselves a lot because you and I tend to both be very observant about how we're feeling, what
Hmm.
the situation makes me feel, and what we want out of an outcome of that situation. And I think
No.
that's because we're more open to seeing what other people need in addition to ourselves. And maybe that is a socialization as women and people who are otherwise other, that we feel the need to like make sure everybody else is okay before we make sure we're okay. Or it's a
Mm-hmm.
way that we are making ourselves feel okay because we're creating an environment that we think is a kinder environment for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
so funny talking about avoiding the news. From a pop culture standpoint, I think it was a few years ago, there was a very popular show, The Fabulous Mrs. Maisel, maybe it was called,
Mm-hmm.
Marvelous
Mm-hmm.
Maisel. And I had so many friends that were recommending it, and I made it through part of one episode because there was so much bickering among the characters, right? And like that was their shtick, right? Everybody was bickering with each other. And I'm like, I cannot sit through a show where everybody is just like low key arguing with each other all the freaking time and judging each other. Like,
You're
no,
like, this
I'm a
is
hard
what I
no.
avoid. Yeah, this is what I
Yeah.
cut out of my life constantly. Yeah, you're like just cutting, and you're like, not this, no.
But I think we
It
all
makes
do
sense.
that, right? Like when we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to protect ourselves, whether we're on a news break, whether or not we avoid horror or we avoid, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
like if a show shows the killing of an animal just as a plot twist, I'm like, hardcore, no, I'm never watching you again. Or if a movie does, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm either walking out or I'm stopping that movie. Because no, killing
Mm-hmm.
animals that are your pets is not some like plot twist or plot device.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that is really it says to me that you're aware of what's healthy for you. And we can think about it as our, inner child. We can think about it as just who we are. But at the end of the day, like, are we considering ourselves, our safety, our health, our wellness, and emotional and mental health are huge. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't overstate how, devastating it is to me that we don't prioritize and we don't fund and we literally just don't value and honor, that part of us more and in ourselves and in each other and as a society. And so I think that this is maybe like, this conversation makes me just believe even more so and reminds me of the fact that like we have to first be cognizant of how important that is, and then we need to know ourselves, first and foremost, because if I mean, for somebody else that's might maybe not important, or it doesn't affect their mental emotional health, or that's not a values alignment issue or whatever, but maybe something that wouldn't even think about twice is devastating for someone to see or hear. And one of the tools that I just want to share, that I've found in some small way has helped me is just letting people know a little bit about my trauma, which has been really, really challenging for me, like to do it, especially in a
Oh, that's
professional
so
setting.
brave.
Yeah,
That's so
it's
brave.
it's yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, but I think that you get there by getting comfortable with it yourself first,
Yeah.
like when it's a brand new wound, it's really hard to be like, let me expose this wound to the world, let's show it off, really hard. I think you need some healing, a little bit of healing, but you don't have to be healed all the way, and you can share it. And the reason I'm saying this is because um everyone carries trauma, period. Hard
Hmm.
stop. Like every one of us has had some kind of trauma, multiple traumas, big, small, and little, middle, like all the different types, emotional, physical, mental, sexual, financial. Like there's a bajillion ways that you can experience trauma. Um, and a lot of times people feel like they feel like their trauma is not big enough to even recognize. Um, and I know I have felt this way where I was experiencing like truly like traumatic, responses to the way I was being treated and abused, and it took me a long time to even talk about it as like, oh, this is abuse, this is harmful, this hurt me, because I would tell myself in the moment, well, I should be able to handle this, I should be able to get through this, this is, I should be a professional, whatever I was telling myself, it just wasn't true. I was denying my own humanity. So I
Hmm.
think I just share this because you can offer this to people sometimes, when you feel safe enough to, or maybe brave enough to. Um, and it can at least help them understand that, you're a human and that their actions might be impacting you differently than maybe they would impact somebody else. And I feel like people genuinely sometimes do not even they just literally don't know the impact of their actions. Some people do. Some people are abusing you on purpose and they know it, and they know that they're, trying to manipulate you to get what they want out of you. But sometimes I think that people are literally just, doing something that they think is good, that this is going to get us the best results. This is going to get us whatever. It might not even feel like or look like abuse from the outside. But if you tell somebody, like, look, the things that you were saying or doing, like, they're harmful to me because of this experience that I had, or this injury that I had, this emotional injury that I had, this wound that I have, this thing that I'm still healing from, still fresh. It's like if you had a literal open sore on your arm and someone didn't know it, they grabbed you by the arm. Wouldn't you tell them that hurt?
Mhm.
Wouldn't you tell them, like, hey, I have an injury there. Like, can you please be sensitive around this area? And I think it's literally the same thing, just in the emotional and mental plane. And so it's really
I love
scary.
that.
But you can do that. You can
Yeah.
do that too.
I think it's also a good reminder to realize that we don't know the experiences of somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
words matter, and we should use
Mm-hmm.
the words that are, in my opinion, the kindest and most
Mm.
optimistic view of the situation,
Yeah,
because we don't
absolutely.
know, right? Like, you can't look at
Yeah.
somebody and know what they're about. You can't look at them and know whether or not they're healthy or not healthy.
No.
That's not how this works,
No.
because we're all different
Well,
and everything impacts us
yeah.
differently.
We don't all wear our trauma on our sleeves, obviously. So you just
Yeah.
can't know what somebody has been through. I mean, I think this is where the whole, like, trigger warning thing came from, but I feel like it's gotten almost like, I don't know, like, kind of like, um it's been diminished to just like this, oh, I said trigger warning, so, like, you should be fine. But
Oh, that's
you
awful.
know, I know, but I
Well,
feel like it's getting to that
yeah.
point, or people just dismiss that all together. They don't understand why we have to have any trigger warnings or what have you. But that's for, like, a big public space, or whatever. But I think for me, just having that skill set of understanding that, like, every person has a whole asset of lived experience that you do not have, period. Like, just knowing that,
Hmm.
just walking into every situation with somebody and being like, okay, well, I have no idea what you've been through. So as I'm speaking, let me just check in with you. I mean, is that so terrible? You're already having a conversation. Like, just checking in with somebody and we've talked about this before, but I mean, we've asked about, should we, think about whether or not someone's, in a place to receive feedback? Are they in a place, where they just need to be heard? Are they in a place of vulnerability? Are they in a place of being generative? I mean, I think, we pick up on a lot of cues, facial cues, body language, tone of voice, volume of voice, all of these things. Like, we're hardwired evolutionarily to understand each other in a lot of ways. But our language is such a gift. The complexity of language, we talked about, vocabulary, and it really is a gift in terms of not just knowing words that really describe what we're going through or what someone else is going through, but using that language to really get into somebody's perspective, or to understand, where they are, what state they're in. Like, we have a beautiful gift that we can use. And I think, maybe we just get caught up in whatever we want to say at the moment or whatever. But I would just say that it's a skill set of, you know, just I want to say empathy, but it's the wrong word. I'm trying to think of a word that means, we care enough to care for each other in the conversation.
There's this quote, I think it's from Emily Post, about manners and politesse, and
Mm,
she boils it down to manners are essentially a sensitivity to others. And I think it's
yeah.
something we forget, right? Because how we treat
Mm-hmm.
each other, which is by definition our manners. Oftentimes we think it's about these rigid rules, but it's really
Right.
about how we're reacting with somebody else and interacting
Yeah.
with somebody else.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
read recently this quote about inside an article about how kids and people benefit from, parents and experiences that like either support how to live in a healthy manner or to how to manage their funds or whatever it may be. And the quote was about how the greatest asset that we can give to the next generation is teaching them how to be emotionally equipped to handle things. And that is something
Mm.
that is so overlooked. Like everybody assumes that, oh,
How, yes.
you should come from wealthy parents. But really, what you should come from are parents who are emotionally equipped to give you the skills to handle people, right? Like parents who
Absolutely.
are not reactionary,
And
which I think
handle
goes back.
life, period.
Yeah,
Like,
right? Just how you explained with your daughter, right? You don't want her to
hmm.
make this, you don't want to tell her what to think. You want to teach her how to think.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's so different. And I think so many parents like want to put their kids, square peg, round hole kind of situation, make
Mm.
them fit what they think as opposed to what you're doing, which is
Hmm.
allowing her to be herself. And that is such a
Yeah.
gift to her in the future.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, I think the other part to that too is like letting ourselves be human. So, like, thinking
Right?
back with our inner child, like, I don't, I assume that so many people can relate to what you just said in their childhood, right? Like in their childhood, their parents wanted them to be a doctor, their parents wanted them to be a lawyer, is the most like, general thing that you can ever think of. But what else did
Yeah.
they like? I keep thinking of like a stamp, like where someone just like stamps themselves onto someone else. And like, what else did they try to
Mm-hmm.
stamp onto you that you're still trying to overcome, that you're or maybe you're not even overcoming it or understanding or want, like, maybe you're not in that place where you're like ready to overcome it, but rather you're still trying to be it, and that's a really really difficult life to try to be something that somebody else wants you to be because they want you to be that and not because you want to be that, or because that's something that calls to you or is a passion of yours, or that feels like purpose
Well,
to you. That's,
think about
I
all
feel
those
like, one of the
people.
most tragic ones. Yeah.
Think about those people who are like named after their parent, right? Like, isn't that
Mm.
almost by definition trying to imprint their personality upon them? Like, I'm thinking about like Billy Joe and Billy Joe second and Billy Joe the
The
third
third.
and the fourth and the fifth.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah,
it's just a cop out, and don't want your kids to like have their own identity.
literally, like, to the name. That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah. Yeah. And what again, like, what are you signaling to this child?
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's never said out loud, and so much of it is said out loud, but there's so much subtext that's never said out loud that you just understand, like, oh, my parents want me to do this. My parents want me to be this. I need to be this. I need to play this role in this family because nobody else is going to do it. I mean, the saddest thing to me is, when children feel like they have to become the parents of their parents. And, we see that too often. But it's just the reality of the situation, and that nobody tells you, hey, be a parent. You just know, like, oh, you look around like, hey, nobody's filling this role. I guess I'm going to have to do that. And so,
I'm still doing that. Like I feel as though I am parenting my parents at this point in my life.
and it's so sad, right? Like, you should, and that's another thing, like, little baby Tessa, like, did you ever really get to be fully a child? Did you get to have the benefit of being like just a child? And I'm not even like you as an in particular example, but I mean, for people that have had to step into that role, like, when did it happen for you? Like, do you remember when it happened for you? How did your life change? How did your mindset change? How did your emotional maturity have to change, to become that person and fill in that role? Like, I just feel like there's so much there. This topic is so rich for me because I just think, like, we as adults, one of the things that we're good at is moving forward and
Hmm.
just
Not
doing the
necessarily honoring the
thing.
past. Hmm.
Exactly. Like not looking back, just like, what do I have to do looking, to the future, trying to make sure that things are secure, all of that good stuff. And there's just so much there that we never get to unpack, unless, you're, maybe in lucky enough to be able to go to therapy, wise enough to be in therapy, lucky enough to have an incredible therapist, and able
Hmm.
to stay in therapy long enough to really dig into these things. But as we know in this country, that's far too rare, for
Yep.
so many of us. And so, I love this conversation and us just taking a moment to reflect on and think about our, I guess inner child is what we're calling it maybe, or just our past selves and what we went through, and just honoring and recognizing the journey, those early parts of our journey, and how those formed us, how those experiences shaped us. um and just recognizing that, like, there was damage done that needs, maybe there are wounds there that still need to be tended to, and also
At
like
least,
not reopening them again.
yeah, that's exactly
Protecting
what I was thinking.
ourselves.
Like,
Yeah.
it seems as though, me and my love of rebellion from society, protecting your inner child and who you have been and who you are is an act of rebellion in this society, right?
mm,
Just like taking
mm,
care of yourself. This is another way of taking care of yourself so that your inner self is being nurtured and those childhood traumas are allowed to heal, and you're protecting yourself from additional trauma being added to the existing trauma. Or as you pointed out, like if you had an open wound, do you want to put a band-aid on it and some ointment so it could heal? Or do you just
mm.
want it to, be free, and then you're just going to walk through public restrooms and just like rub it against the wall, right?
Rub it all over other people, infect other people with
Yeah.
your trauma. Oh my gosh,
Yep.
the trauma dumping. That analogy keeps on
Yeah.
giving.
It does, doesn't it? And it's so wrong and it's so awful.
Yeah, but I mean, and we wouldn't think that that's okay, like we wouldn't do that. But we do that when it comes to trauma and mental and
Hmm.
emotional, instabilities and traumas that we haven't healed. I mean, and we don't even tend to them. And society also tells us that that's just fine, apparently, right? Like we're not expected to take, I don't know, like we're not expected to take a sabbatical and, go figure out all of this stuff and, come back healthier and well. Like we don't make room for that. I mean, we don't even make room for people to have children. I mean, to give birth to children and to
Yeah.
start them off right. We don't make room for healing. We don't make room for health. We don't make room. So like that's why all this self-care stuff always cracks me up. Like when you see it online, which is mostly like just like product based, commercials essentially at this point. But so much of it is like, here's what you should be doing as an individual because it's all on you. Here's another thing for you to do because you're not doing enough. And you have to remember to do this too. And we never
Hmm.
get to that point where we say, like, oh, well, shouldn't we be doing something as a society? Like, shouldn't we maybe like move to, I don't know, a 4-day work week? Or like, shouldn't we like give ourselves a break as society for everyone to kind of just be with their families or their chosen families or their friends or themselves for a little while and not have to make outputs and productivity? Like, no, we don't ever think about that. We don't think about the resources that people need, the access that they need to healing resources. Like we just don't do that. And so I say all of that because I always want to give the context of like, as much as we can offer here and the things that we can do as individuals and as much power as we do have, also like still wanting to recognize that it's a huge challenge that society has not made it easy for us to tackle.
They have not. And feel as though every time I think it's getting better, it's like it gets neutralized. I don't
Yeah.
want I don't want to live in a world where I think it gets worse. I want to live in a world where I feel like the growth stagnates and then we have to like
Mm,
re-stimulate the growth. Like it's a plant that we potted and we have forgotten to fertilize that. We've just been giving it water, but we haven't given it any food to allow it to grow.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's an important piece because if we don't recognize that we have any power to change, our kind of societal infrastructure too, then, that becomes like just another like path to apathy, right? Like, well, we don't do that. We're never going to do it. We've never done it. So why even try? But the truth is like everything is changeable. I think that's the most amazing thing in life is, change is
Isn't it?
hard. People hate change a lot of times, but you can change things and you can change your individual life. You can change the lives of people around you, and you can absolutely have an impact on overall society as well. But it's a matter of again always like I think it's just starts from the inside out. So again, this topic is amazing because we start with like let's get to know not just who we are today, but like who were we originally, like what did that little girl go through, what did that child go through, what was their lived experience, like where are the wounds still, like we start inward, and then we can spread that health and wellness and that healing outwardly.
And maybe the easiest way to think about it is when you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your inner child as well. And remind yourself with
Mm-hmm.
like a photo on your phone or a photo on your bedside table or wherever you keep your personal photos, right? Like maybe that's the easiest way for us to know that if we change that child that and protect that child can protect another child,
Mm.
even if those children are, 95 and 70 and 42 and 36 and like
Yeah.
it's important because I think you're absolutely right. I think when we heal ourselves and then we react with other people and they see, oh, well, that's how this person reacted and we are similarly situated, it will save me a lot of anguish if I try to employ some of the tools that they're using. And then it keeps on getting better because more people are protecting themselves, more people are being vulnerable and sharing things that have become trauma for them, are traumatic for them, and the reactions are based on those traumas so that people know, hey, maybe let's not make light of, sexual assault. Well, you would think that's not a problem, but in the business I work in, you know,
Mm.
sexual assault jokes are still, every other Tuesday. Nah, not
Mm.
every other Tuesday, like every day of every week, right? Like it's still cool to be misogynistic and talk
Ugh,
about rape culture like it's something cool.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah. But I mean, it just, even in that example, it just underscores for me how energy is so transferable, right? Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're not an empath, like somebody's energy can change everything. It's just interesting to me how powerful it is and how we don't even really talk about that or recognize it. But somebody enters the room, and I mean, like, for example, what you just talked about, that would only happen in a room where there's at least three people are who are signaling in that space that this
Mm-hmm.
is acceptable and that this is okay. If there
Yep.
were, three or more people signaling this is not okay, like, and I have the face on right now, making the face of like, no, sir, that is not
Yeah.
what you're going to be saying in this space, like that would stop. That would immediately
Yep.
stop. And it doesn't even have to be said out loud. It doesn't even have to be a policy. Like I think so many times we think, oh, we need to write it down and we need to make an official policy that needs to be signed or something like that. It's not that. It's we call it culture, we call it societal norms, we call it all kinds of things. But those are the most powerful things in the universe. I'm not universe, most powerful things in our society. Like, I mean, truly for human interaction, if the majority of people are letting you know, like, no, this is not going to happen, with their face, with their body language, with their words, with their tone, like all of those signals, then it's not going to happen. Like it would actually be stopped. And so it's just interesting to think about how much power we have and how many people um, really have been duped into thinking that they have no power in those spaces,
Yep.
right? In so many spaces. And I don't know. I find it really fascinating that some of the people that do the most harm, they actually do the most like homework in a way. They do the most like groundwork. Like I don't know, how many of y'all have experienced like malicious narcissism, but I have had my fair share in my life, and the extent to which people like that actually go out of their way to like prime and prepare the different people so that when they get into a group setting, they have like I think about it like as like the gang that they need to get what they want, or to set the tone is so fast. Like, I mean, just as the psychological like standpoint, so fascinating, terrible, but fascinating to see the power of that. Because if you can get enough people to be silent, or if you can get enough people to nod along with you, or if you can get enough people to agree out loud with you, or to vote with you, or to join in. I mean, just think about the bullies on the playgrounds, like
Oh
if you can get
yeah.
three or four bullies together, or three or four, if you can get, if one bully can get three or four people behind, I'm going to say him, um, I shouldn't say him though, because it's literally every gender can do this and does do this. But if you can get enough people behind you, I mean, this is why there's three mean girls, right? Like, it's always three or four. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
why on the playground there's three or four quote unquote bullies. It's like there's the power of numbers and the power of influence, and they know what they're doing, whether or not they know what they're doing. It's really fascinating, but it's all, human psychology. And so, why am I saying all of this? I think for me, it's just like, again, recognizing the patterns and understanding, like, even when you're the quote unquote victim or survival of this kind of assaults, like, just understanding that, like, they're able to get away with this just because they found enough people, to be on their side. And so it just makes a lot of implications for me about how we could respond to something like that, or prepare for something like that, maybe as a society.
And it reminds me not to be silent, right? Like, even if it
Mm-hmm.
is in a workspace where somebody is identified as emotional because of the
Mm-hmm.
reaction they had, I think it's incumbent upon us to say, hey, let's take a pause and work through however we need to, because clearly something has happened and we don't want anyone in our environment to feel isolated or attacked or traumatized. So let's figure this out and then we can move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, yeah, there's so many tools that you can use, but sometimes it's just a curt, like, no, that is
Yeah.
unacceptable kind of thing. I mean, it really depends. Again, like, this is us trying to navigate these tricky, tricky places, of adulthood, all the nuance, all the different emotional, social dynamics. Like, it's not uncomplicated at all. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is, what are your values? What do you care about? How do you care for people? How do you care for yourself? In times where I have felt harmed in different places, I looked around and I just thought, nobody in this room knows how to care for me in this moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to care for myself either. Like, looking back, I was like, I didn't know what to do to protect myself or to care for myself in that moment. Um, and so, there's no shame in that. It's just the fact that it's a good tool to sit and recognize what it really is. Because even if people are not trying to be malicious, that's one side of the spectrum. Again, there's another side of that, people are actually trying to be helpful, good intentions.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean they know how to care for you. And they're not going to know how to care for you unless they actually know something about you. I think, like, that's why as hard as it could be, as brave as you may need to be to do it, sometimes I think it really is important, not sometimes, a lot of times it's really important to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to actually show who you are, share some of your trauma with folks so that they know that, like, this is just a place to be sensitive around, and we can still work around it, and we can definitely get the thing done. But this is just how you can care for me in this kind of conversation. And so, that might sound a lot like very woo woo to people, but I think that if you're doing work and you genuinely, even in a workplace workplace setting, because I mean, I think we should have care for each other in every conversation and every, interaction that we
Absolutely.
have. But even in a workplace situation, I say that example because I feel like it's the one that people struggle with the most almost, or it's a very common place to like suppress humanity and to not recognize each other's humanity. And so
Be
it's a
like Henry
challenging
Ford, be
place.
productive.
Yeah, exactly. And so how can we inject humanity back into this place that has been sapped so much of humanity, right? And I think one way that we could do that is just like recognizing that we all hold trauma and that they're hidden wounds and none of us know where each other's is. And
Hmm.
and also like an important thing that you said is modeling. So being vocal about things and being vulnerable about things, not only is it a service that you're offering these people that you're working with and you're using to protect your child, right, your inner child, but also you're giving other people permission if they don't feel like they're in a place to give it to themselves. You are opening the door for other people to walk the same path, right, and to employ the same tools. Like modeling is hugely impactful, and it's one of the ways that we actually really learn as human beings. Like they say monkey see monkey do, right? Like this is just how we are literally wired. Like we see other people doing things, we understand that, oh, this is an acceptable thing to do, or we look around, oh, how did everyone react to that, oh, maybe I could do that too. It went okay for that person, and so you're literally like helping all the way around. You're helping yourself today, you're helping your inner child, you're helping other people around you. And when I say helping, I mean you're making this a better space and a better place for everyone involved.
And yeah, I'd like to think that we all want the world to be a better place and a better space and better for people and animals and things that come after us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so,
So,
why do we hold ourselves back? And so we know
yeah,
why. We know where all the messaging is coming from, but if you haven't heard it before, like here's your place, here's your message to
here's your
do what's
permission.
going to serve you. Here's your permission. Like give yourself that permission, you know, give yourself a little bit of liberation. And I know it's, also scary, like you said, but being brave is not being fearless. It's being afraid and doing it
Hmm.
anyways. And so we'll be all right on the other side, I promise.
Yes, we will. And I hope
Mhm.
that people find the courage and give themselves the permission to be like RuPaul and protect their inner child. Because I think it'll do us all a world of good.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna have to find a good baby picture. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Tessa, for bringing this fabulous, fabulous topic to the fore today. Such a beautiful conversation with you. And I hope all of you listening have enjoyed it. And I just wishing all the best for y'all in the next week, and hoping you can remember these messages and conversations and tap back into them, tap back into this uplifted feeling to stay uplifted. So take
And
care,
I hope
everyone.
everyone feels uplifted after this conversation. I know I do, and I
Mhm.
feel encouraged to, open and be more vulnerable. Like you gave us such a great example about sharing those vulnerabilities in such a brave and safe way to minimize future traumas. And that's a gift for all of us. So thank you for that.
Mhm. Thank you, Tessa. Now take care. Bye bye.